Hey, Ramblers, before we kick off today's episode, thank you for even taking the time to listen to the podcast. We appreciate it. If you love the podcast, toss your 2 cents in using the hashtag Let's Ramble and make sure you hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all the latest content and updates. Visit us at our new website at offsource.tech and make sure to follow us across all social platforms at Assistance HQ. Now let's ramble. And now, a moment from our sponsor. Hey Ramblers, welcome back to another episode of the Ramblings. And I just want to get some things off my chest, off my mind. We don't have our co-host today, Benjamin. He's working on a couple of things right now. He's pretty busy. So we've gotten a lot of updates, and I just want to give you guys a quick share. So we happen to get our very first investor meeting. So I'm extremely excited to be doing that. And I don't know. I'm at a loss for words right now. And you know me, this is the Rambling, so I'm never really at a loss for words. But I'm trying to do a much better job at curating and cherry picking the vocabulary and the words that I use. Because as we've talked about before, we've come across a form of feedback, if you will, and someone has given me feedback. And so because it's you guys listening, I love listening to your feedback, and I respect it. So I like to take it into account. One of the things or pieces of feedback was no cussing. I shouldn't cuss, and I completely understand that. And I do my best to not cuss, and I especially understand that because of me being in my position. Naturally, due to my skin color, I don't necessarily have the leeway or the leverage that my counterpart business owners might have, or content creators. And so I don't necessarily have the luxury of being, we'll say, as open or as free. And so I would like to bring to attention that we are not going to say a person based or the motivation, right? But what I would like to bring about is types of owners or types of people that create content. And to be in a beginning stage of creating content and being a beginning owner and a beginner founder, first time and everything, and going through this process, you have to really establish and find yourself. And so something that has been a part of me throughout my almost entire life is I've been a very pretty good follower of the rules. Nothing bad, really. But when it gets into business, you have to be willing to bend or break certain rules. You have to be willing to put your neck out there for your business and for your brand. And something that I would like to do is, yes, I do the best I can to occasionally, not even occasionally, to completely eradicate the forms of cuss words and explicit language within my podcasts and content that I use. However, for particular episodes or for particular forums, for example, my Facebook is a very large example. I do a content live up there that I'm sure most of you don't watch, and I wouldn't necessarily even recommend you watching it because it's a not necessarily different side of me, but a part of me that I don't think every single owner would appreciate, and so you have to be able to curate your message to each platform. And so for platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter, where a bulk of the people that I will be networking, communicating, and connecting with are going to be using those platforms as a basis of how to do business with me, I'm much more conservative on those apps. Twitter, I'm more conservative in terms of language than I am about the content of that I'm speaking. However, on LinkedIn, I am 100% suit and tie professional. When it comes to Facebook, I am hoodie. I'm a hoodie founder. I put on the Angela's Assistance of America hoodie until we get the off-source hoodie, but it's more of a hoodie version of Angela or me as a business owner. It's the business owner that wears casual clothes and connects with not only a much younger demographic, but a much broader and more urban demographic. And so connecting with these particular people and getting my message across is something completely different. And so I do not want you guys to be afraid or feel that there's an unprofessional manner being taken place when I do use foul language or anything of that nature, because they're just words. I understand that there's a professionalism into it. However, in my experience so far, all of us cuss on the back end. We just refrain from cussing in actual video published settings. However, if you've ever been to a business meeting, networking meeting, or even just talk to somebody one on one, we all cuss. And I say we all, where any person listening to this conversation cannot say that in a professional setting, meaning a business meeting, a networking meeting, a one on one coffee with somebody that you're connecting with, has not cussed. We all cuss. And I've been in these meetings and I know, because I, being a younger person and don't want to become off, I don't want to come off as unprofessional because I cuss and because I'm young. When you're young, and unfortunately, when you're young and black, there's already a stigma against you. So you have to operate by the rules of the game. For example, taxes. You have to pay taxes. You can't avoid paying taxes. However, you can avoid paying taxes. You can't avoid paying taxes by just not paying them. That's not how the rules work. You have to play by the rules. And so the rules say that if you are going to publicly display this particular language, cussing, using explicit language, then this is going to be the drawback of such. People will find you not as professional. People are going to take into account your age. They're going to assume that you don't know what you're talking about, and no one's going to want to necessarily touch you, even with a 10-foot pole. Those are the generic rules of business, especially back in the day. But as we grow and as the younger generation creeps more into the business industry, and as entrepreneurs become younger and the new wave of people are starting to increase, it becomes much more uh, apparent to us that we are okay with much more lenient forms of communication. And so, something that I just want to bring to attention for you guys is, I care, but I don't care. And I appreciate all feedback. And I tend to each person's feedback. I really do, because these are the people that are watching. When I don't really respond to people doing negative things. Like I said, I'm taking a large Gary Vee approach. And for those of you that don't understand what Gary Vee said, I actually think I should post a snippet on my social media and make a comment about this. I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to create a post tonight about what it means to really be in business, because something that is completely not talked about are the unspoken rules of business. I would like to write an article about that as I continue, but the unspoken rules of business are uh the silent what are limitations that are present within the business and entrepreneur industry. They are the do's and the don'ts of the business world. Hey, you should dress like this. You shouldn't dress like this. You should have your hair like this. You shouldn't have your hair like this. Your social media should look like this. Your social media shouldn't look like this. And the unspoken rule is the effect that these changes, or these minor limitations, if you will, have on a business. So if you were to, just look at Gary Vee's talk, he is a large customer, and he has said multiple times throughout multiple different discussions that he's lost money because people don't want to book someone that cusses, that uses that particular language. And then there's a lot of people that still book him, because as someone as him being a booked speaker for multiple speaking engagements a year, clearly the cussing doesn't affect those particular people. However, he would have been able to make more in terms of speaking if that wasn't the case. But the trade-off comes at compromising yourself. So are you going to compromise yourself for money? Now, that's what brand is. What is your brand? Now, when your brand is one being shirt tie stuck in the middle and upright and all of this, then when you go off brand, people are going to have things to say. But the brand, especially as an owner, a small owner, should be you. And when your brand is the business, you have to understand and really, really think about what you want as a brand. You have to think, why is cussing bad? Why is there, what is the negative connotation behind saying fuck? You see, I was almost nervous to say it. I now have to tag it explicit because of children and everything, but it's that exact same mindset and thought pattern that keeps people behind. Oh, when social media and the internet and things of that first started coming out, A lot of business owners were very wary at adapting these different things. I was watching a video the other day, and it's called the J curve. There's a particular curve in which, as new technology and new waves of information are released, companies are slow to adapt it because it will drop productivity because there's a learning curve. So obviously, if you're trying to learn a new process, there's going to be a drop in productivity until you're able to do it. However, after you go through that drop in productivity and now you've learned and gone past the learning curve, we're going to call it a J line, right? So that because you guys are listening, if you were to take a picture of a J, right? Take a picture of how a J looks. You're going to start at a particular point. This is where you're operating at. And this is at a higher point than what you were operating before. So you're at an operating point, right? You're at the low end of your J. That's your operating point, and you're being productive. However, when a new technology or a new trend for businesses and a new way of doing things comes around, businesses are wary to adopt it. Why? Because when you very first adopt it, your productivity is going to drop because of the learning curve. And the learning curve is that curve in the J where you go from your productive point and you do that dip to draw your J. When you do that dip, that represents your drop in productivity. And when you have a drop in productivity, it's due, in this particular case, to the learning curve. Why? Because when you have a learning curve, you obviously aren't going to be as productive as someone who knows and is fluent in that particular area. So it's think of like language. You're talking to somebody. If you are choppy with speaking to someone, the conversation is going to be choppy. It's not going to be as fast. A 10-second conversation might become 15, 16, 17, 20, 25 seconds because you're like, versus, yes, I can do this, I can't do that. Where do I go? What do I do? It's not as fluid. So in business, you're going to have a drop in productivity. And that's what businesses are scared of. They don't want to have a drop in productivity. However, unfortunately, they have to adopt this at some point because it's becoming extremely popular in such the new way that they have to adopt. For example, virtual meetings. Virtual meetings have a drop in productivity because the user has to learn how to operate a meeting on a virtual standpoint. There's different things. If you're doing a webinar versus instead of in live, those meeting points now have different keys. Like if you're raising your hand, the muting, the unmuting, the feedback, there's a technical difficulty behind it. So once you learn that, however, now your productivity starts to increase and surpass where you were productive before. Because now if you think about it, we're going to just use Zoom because we're in the coronavirus time and virtual meetings and virtual seminars have become a new norm. So companies were very scared to adopt doing things virtually, especially hiring and everything. Now you have to adapt to being a virtual style company and being able to operate virtually due to the climate in this of just safety in general. So companies were forced to adapt. So they were at the productivity, correct? And then they were forced. Some took the initiative to do it early, but we're going to go with the companies. We're just going to group them together. Companies that were forced and companies that initiated early, right? So they have to go through this product curve, this learning curve of Zoom. Hey, how do we do our raise of hands? How do we mute, unmute? The Zoom bombing situation, passwords, making sure we're on time, sending out links for Gmail meetings, making sure that communication is seamless. Converting for times, I have to meet with someone at this time zone and I'm in this time zone. So there's a drop in productivity. But as it becomes much easier and more fluent to the person to use, now your productivity increases and increases past what your previous productivity is. Why? Because now that you're fluent in Zoom, you no longer have to say drive to meetings. So you're able to cut out 30 minutes of your day that you would have spent doing a 15-minute drive there and back for a meeting. And you're able to now cut out that 30 minutes because you're able to meet on Zoom. Or you're now able to meet with a larger group of people or create a new form of attention because of Zoom. And so now your productivity has increased because you're not spending time going to meet with somebody. It's like, hey, I went to go to this meeting and I only spent 5 minutes when it should have been a 15-minute meeting. We got done faster. And so things go much more smoothly because you're now on Zoom. You can, when people leave, they can hop off of Zoom and get right back into work. There's no time delay. Now, if people wanted to go into work virtually, now they don't have to commute to work. That's a bonus for other businesses when you had to commute before. So it's about the curve. There's productivity. And when it comes to branding, which is me bringing this full circle, going back to branding, your brand should always be on point and about you. And you should never be afraid of changing it because you are your brand, or whatever your brand is. Your brand, it can change. And so if you want to change your brand into something more efficient or what it now represents, say you were, a company that represented A and you want to move to representing B. If your company would like to represent B, you have to go through the productivity curve, the learning curve of learning how to present and represent your brand from A to B. Another swing to bring it all the way full circle is that is why I am curbing the amount of profanity that is in my podcast. However, I will not be completely removing. So it's about the productivity curve. And as me being the brand, sometimes when I get very excited and I'm extremely hyped about something, about good news and everything of this nature, it's very hard to refrain from using that such profanity sometimes. And so that's me. And me being my brand and representing my company, I do not want me or future employees or people that work with me to feel like they need to limit or curve their natural self. And so that's what was on my mind. And I just wanted to get that off and talk to you guys about that. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace out.
Hey Ramblers, before you go, make sure you're following us on social media at Assistance HQ across the board for all content and exclusives. And for an even more personal touch, subscribe to our weekly newsletter with the link in the description.